Over 150 years ago, a man named Albert Pike wrote a chilling letter, predicting not just one, but 3 world wars. 2 of them already happened. And the third? What if everything you thought was random, every war, every upheaval, was part of a long game? This isn't conspiracy theory, it's a historical letter. And 2 world wars have already followed the script almost perfectly. "We shall unleash the nihilists and the atheists," wrote an infamous 19th century figure describing how he would provoke a formidable social cataclysm that would shock the world with its horror. In other words, we shall unleash the destroyer. This mysterious proclamation, cold, calculated, and brimming with dark intent, outlined a plot to incite chaos on an unprecedented scale. But who would devise such a diabolical plan? And could the chaos we've seen in our world be part of that plan? These questions beckon us on a journey back in time, peeling away the layers of history to uncover a secret blueprint meant to stir up 3 world wars and remake the world. Our journey begins in the year 1870. Imagine a dimly lit study where 2 men trade letters under utmost secrecy. One is Giuseppe Mazzini, an Italian revolutionary leader steeped in secret societies, and the other is Albert Pike, an American Civil War general and influential Freemason. In a letter dated January 22, 1870, Mazzini confided to Pike a daring vision. All the existing Masonic organizations would continue as they were, each with its own structure and leaders, but behind the scenes a new hidden order would control them all. "We must allow all of the federations to continue just as they are, but we must create a super-right, which will remain unknown," Mazzini wrote. This secret, supreme right would handpick only the highest initiates, those deemed worthy of the deepest secrets, and bind them to absolute secrecy. Through this invisible High Council, we will govern all Freemasonry, which will become the one international center, the more powerful because its direction will be unknown. Think about that. A hidden inner circle, pulling the strings of all the visible lodges and organizations, unbeknownst even to their own lower members. This was Pike and Mazzini's daring scheme, to quietly unite the world's fraternities under one guiding hand. They even gave this clandestine body a name, the new and reformed Palladian Rite, with headquarters strategically placed in Charleston, USA, Rome, Italy, and Berlin, Germany. Pike would lead the secret rite in the West, Mazzini in the East. The average Mason or civic leader would have no clue that a higher, invisible authority was directing their course. Such was the early vision that Albert Pike embraced, a covert hierarchy to steer world events from the shadows, unified in purpose and Luciferian in philosophy. It was a bold plan for sure, but it was only the beginning. Just 1 year later, in August 1871, Albert Pike penned another extraordinary letter, this time outlining a blueprint for nothing less than a one-world order. He described a world order, a one order where all nations are under the control of one central organization. Pike envisioned an international center of power guiding the destinies of nations from behind the scenes. To achieve this, as unimaginable as it sounds, Pike's plan called for 3 monumental global wars that would reshape the world and pave the way for this unified order. Yes, you heard that right. 3 world wars foretold years before any world war had occurred. In his letter to Mazzini dated August 15, 1871, Pike coolly explained that 3 future world wars would be orchestrated to prepare the world for the new world order. Each conflict would serve a specific purpose in weakening certain powers and ideologies, until, at last, a global government could step in. It was a breathtakingly audacious plot, to use war itself, the most horrific of human calamities, as a tool to forge a new societal order. The world, of course, had yet to experience even a single world war. One can only imagine how fantastical, or mad, such predictions might have sounded to Pike's contemporaries. And yet, as we shall see, the 20th century unfolded almost exactly along the lines Pike described. Was it mere coincidence or chilling foresight? "And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars, for nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. Jesus warned long ago. But who could imagine that men might plan such wars in advance? Let's walk through Pike's blueprint, step by step, war by war, and compare it with the real history that followed. According to Pike's plan, the First World War was to be ignited in order to destroy the power of the Russian Tsars, those emperors who stood as champions of the Eastern Orthodox Christian faith. Russia under the Tsars was a deeply religious nation. The Tsar was even called Defender of Orthodoxy. Pike and his secret circle saw this as a major obstacle. So the plan was simple and ruthless. Use war to bring down the Tsar and plunge Russia into godless revolution. The First World War was to be fought so as to enable the Illuminati to overthrow the powers of the Tsars in Russia and turn that country into the stronghold of atheistic communism, reads one summary of Pike's letter. To fuel the conflict, Pike wrote that agents of his secret order would stir antagonism between the British Empire and the German Empire, ensuring a large-scale war that would engulf Europe. History tells us this is exactly what happened a few decades later. World War I erupted in 1914, with Britain and Germany on opposite sides, and by 1917 the Russian Empire had collapsed. Tsar Nicholas II was overthrown and later executed, and in his place arose the Soviet Union, the world's first avowedly atheist communist state. The Orthodox Church in Russia was brutally suppressed. Countless priests were killed or imprisoned, churches ransacked, faith silenced. Pike had written all this in 1871, long before 1914, yet events followed his script uncannily. Did this happen by chance? Pike's letter was on display in the British Museum for many years, openly declaring the goal to bring about an atheistic communistic state in Russia. Did that happen? Yes. Think of the human cost. Millions perished in the trenches of World War I. Empires fell, and an entire way of life in Russia was extinguished. Families wept over sons never returning home. Centuries-old traditions were ground to dust. Was all this sorrow orchestrated to fulfill a secret agenda? It's a harrowing thought. Yet as the smoke cleared from World War I, the stage was being set for an even greater conflict, one that Pike's plan also eerily anticipated. Pike's next instruction was to foment a Second World War, one that would hinge on the ideological clash between fascism and political Zionism, the movement for a Jewish homeland. In his 1871 blueprint, Pike wrote that this war must be arranged so that Nazism, fascist dictatorship, would be destroyed, and Zionism would grow strong enough to establish a sovereign nation of Israel in the Holy Land. At the same time, this war would allow communism to spread and become powerful, counterbalancing the West. World War II was to be fought so that Nazism would be destroyed, and the power of political Zionism increased so that the sovereign state of Israel could be established in Palestine. Pike added that during this second war, international communism shall be built up until it equals in strength that of united Christendom, then kept in check until the final conflict to come. Again, the parallels with actual history are stunning. In 1939, World War II broke out, sparked by the aggression of Nazi Germany, fascism, against the Allies. The war ended in 1945 with the total defeat of Nazism, the very outcome Pike had foreseen. And in 1948, with world sympathy behind the Jewish people after the Holocaust, the State of Israel was officially founded in Palestine, exactly as envisioned. It's sobering to realize that Pike's letter described this outcome decades in advance, to bring about a Zionist state in Israel. Did it achieve this objective? Yes, in fact, after this war, Israel in its present form was reinstated. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union, born from World War I, emerged from World War II as a superpower controlling Eastern Europe, spreading communism far beyond Russia. By the late 1940s, the world was divided into two camps, the Communist East and the Judeo-Christian West, of roughly equal strength, just as Pike's plan required. Communism had indeed become a formidable force, yet it was temporarily restrained, contained by the West until some future time when it would be needed for the final social cataclysm. Consider the human drama of World War II. Over 60 million people died in that war, soldiers and civilians, mothers and children. Unspeakable horrors like the Holocaust occurred, in which 6 million Jews were murdered under Nazi tyranny. Out of that horror, the survivors built a new nation, Israel, hoping for peace and safety. And the global balance of power shifted in a way that set the stage for the next great confrontation. Could all this have been maneuvered by design? It's an uncomfortable question. We usually attribute World War II to the ambitions of Hitler, the policies of Churchill and Roosevelt, the struggle between tyranny and freedom. Yet here we have a letter from 1871 that seems to have predicted the exact outcomes: the fall of Nazi Germany, the creation of Israel, the rise of a Cold War standoff between communism and the West. If Pike's blueprint was a mere coincidence, it is a staggering one. If it was something more, a script being followed by unseen actors, then the tragedy of those years takes on an even darker meaning. Pike's letter did not stop at 2 wars. It spoke of a third world war, one to be ignited by taking advantage of the tension between the Muslim world and the Jewish world: political Zionism. The plan calls for a conflict so vast that it would draw in all the nations, ultimately wearing them down to exhaustion. World War III is to be fomented by using the differences between political Zionists and the leaders of the Muslim world, Pike allegedly wrote. He foretold a war that would erupt in the Middle East, setting Islam and Israel at each other's throats, and spreading outward until every nation was sucked into the vortex. The war is to be conducted in such a way that Islam and political Zionism will destroy themselves, Pike's outline continues, while at the same time the remaining nations will be forced to fight themselves into a state of complete exhaustion, physically, mentally, spiritually, and economically. In other words, a truly worldwide war of attrition, nations so battered and weary that they lose all resolve and stability. Does this scenario sound eerily familiar? Ever since the mid-20th century, and especially as we entered the 21st, the Middle East has been a boiling cauldron of conflict. The tension between Israel and surrounding Islamic nations has led to multiple wars and crises. Elsewhere, terrorism and ideological clashes pit parts of the Islamic world against the West. One doesn't need much imagination to see how a spark in this powder keg could escalate into a global nightmare. In fact, Pike's envisioned Third World War directly evokes the specter of Armageddon, the prophesied final war in the Bible. In the book of Revelation, Armageddon is the gathering place of the nations for the last great battle, Revelation 16:16. Astonishingly, over 150 years ago, Pike's letter spoke of a third world war in the Middle East that would result in Armageddon. Are we living on the brink of that very event? It's a chilling thought. We see headlines of conflict in the Middle East and surging tensions between religious and cultural blocs. We watch as acts of terror or outbreaks of war send ripples of fear around the globe. One has to wonder, are these the early tremors of the worldwide cataclysm Pike described? If so, it means that long ago, someone, or something, intended for the modern world to descend into this chaos. Is it all part of the plan to finally break the nations into exhaustion? The Bible warns of a time of trouble and a great war, but it also tells us not to be deceived by appearances. It asks in Luke 21:26 how in the last days men's hearts will fail them for fear, looking at the things coming on the earth. We cannot say for certain if Pike's World War III has begun or is yet to come. But the very fact that this 19th century plan so accurately outlined 2 world wars and points toward a third makes one pause. It urges us to look at current events with new eyes and ask, what is really driving the conflicts of our time? As terrifying as a global war between Islam and Judaism sounds, Pike's plan held an even more pernicious twist for after World War III. The ultimate aim was not simply world exhaustion. It was to force a final spiritual resolution upon humanity. Pike wrote that after a third war, a period of unprecedented turmoil would be unleashed. He stated, "We shall unleash the nihilists and atheists and provoke a formidable social cataclysm, which in all its horror will show clearly to the nations the effect of absolute atheism. In other words, those who love destruction, nihilists, and those who believe in nothing, atheists, would be let loose to wreak havoc." They would carry out acts of extreme savagery and bloodshed, creating a nightmare scenario of violence and despair. Society would crumble under the weight of lawlessness, and people everywhere would see the ugly reality of a world without faith or moral compass. The effect of absolute atheism, origin of savagery, and of the most bloody turmoil. Pike continues by describing the reaction of the masses to this hellish upheaval. Then everywhere, the citizens, obliged to defend themselves against the world minority of revolutionaries, will exterminate those destroyers of civilization. In other words, ordinary people, driven to the brink by terror and chaos, would rise up and annihilate the nihilists responsible for the carnage. The very agents of destruction that were unleashed would themselves be destroyed in turn. But tragically, by this point, the people of the world would be utterly disillusioned. Pike says they would be disillusioned with Christianity, whose deistic spirits will from that moment be without compass or direction, and exhausted by the ferocity of atheism as well. Imagine surviving a world war, and then watching society crumble into violence and anarchy. Every belief system, both religion and secular ideologies, would have failed in the eyes of the masses. In their anguish, people would be anxious for an ideal to believe in, but without knowing where to render its adoration. They will be desperate, like sailors lost at sea with no star to guide them. And here lies the crux of the plan. At that moment of maximum despair and confusion, when humanity cries out for light, they will be shown the true light. But it is not the light they expect. Pike wrote that the multitude will receive the pure light through the universal manifestation of the pure doctrine of Lucifer, brought finally out in the public view. In plain terms, the architects of this chaos plan to reveal Lucifer as the savior and object of worship to the shattered world. After Christianity and atheism have both been conquered and exterminated, eliminated together as dual obstacles, the stage will be set to enthrone a new global religion based on Luciferian doctrine. In their view, Lucifer, whom the Bible identifies as a fallen angel, Satan, is actually the bearer of true light and enlightenment for mankind. They intend that in the aftermath of the great cataclysm, people will be so desperate for hope and order that they will embrace Lucifer's teachings as the foundation of a new age. It is the ultimate bait and switch, create unbearable darkness so that people will grasp at a false light. Let that sink in. A plan to destroy both Christianity and atheism in one masterstroke. And from their ashes, to raise up a new faith centered on Lucifer. This is not mere speculation. These are the very words attributed to Albert Pike in that 1871 letter. It sends chills down the spine. For those of us with a biblical worldview, it is a direct affront to everything holy. A scheme to make the whole world worship the one the Bible calls the devil. Yet we were warned of this kind of final deception, were we not? The Bible in 2 Corinthians 11:14 cautions that Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light. In other words, evil won't always appear with the devil's horns and a pitchfork. Sometimes it will present itself as radiant, benevolent, and wise. The pure doctrine of Lucifer that Pike speaks of would no doubt be billed as some advanced truth, a new enlightenment for a new world, something to save humanity from its despair. But a lie is a lie, even if it glitters. If ever such a moment comes, when a suffering world is invited to unite under a new luminous faith that denounces both traditional religion and godless chaos, we must remember that not all that is called light is truly light. Pike's envisioned cataclysm is terrifying, but take heart. This dark plan is not the only plan at work in the world. Yes, there are those who plot to enthrone Lucifer, but there is also a God who promises that evil will not triumph. The very existence of such a diabolical blueprint suggests that a great cosmic struggle is going on. And indeed, many people of faith, including some who have studied these letters, see history as a battleground between God's truth and Satan's lies, often called the Great Controversy between Christ and Satan. In that context, Pike's plan is essentially Satan's playbook. Cause conflict, fuel hatred, plunge the world into darkness, then offer himself as an angel of light to a desperate humanity. It's a plan that we as individuals are not powerless against, for we can choose the true light over the false. But to do so, we first must know the truth of what has been and what is to come. Such astounding letters and plans, if indeed authentic, would surely be among the most important documents in modern history. And for a time, they were available to be seen. It has been noted that Pike's 1871 letter to Mazzini was once on public display in the British Museum Library in London. Researchers and the curious could actually request to view it like a historical artifact. However, this is no longer the case. According to multiple accounts, the letter was removed from public view and buried in the archives, inaccessible to researchers. In fact, if you inquire today, official channels will either deny knowledge of the letter or claim it never existed. Why would such a document be hidden away? If it were merely a curious and false conspiracy tale, one would think it could be left out in the open, harmless. But instead it has vanished from libraries, as if someone doesn't want people reading Pike's words too closely. It is true that critics have long claimed Pike's letters are a hoax. Mainstream Masonic organizations and some historians assert that no evidence of the 1871 letter exists in their records, and that the whole story was fabricated in the 20th century by persons such as Leo Taxil or William Guy Carr. Leo Taxil was a notorious prankster who in 1897 claimed to have forged some anti-Masonic content, and William Guy Carr was a writer in the 1950s who publicized the 3 World Wars scenario. Freemasons point to these as proof that the Pike letter is just a myth. But here's the perplexing part. Even if a hoaxer wrote these predictions around 1897 or 1950, how on earth did they manage to guess the outcome of World War II, which didn't fully align with expectations until 1945, and even anticipate today's Middle East tensions? The hoax explanation strains credibility when you consider the specificity and accuracy of the predictions. If Leo Taxil invented this in 1897, how did he come to know such details of future events 100 years ahead? It would mean he not only foresaw World War I and II, but also the global political landscape of the early 21st century. That stretches the term coincidence beyond the breaking point. The suppression of these letters from public discourse only adds to the intrigue. Why take them away from the British Museum if they are fake? Why not let people see and judge for themselves? It reminds one of how certain powerful interests often suppress inconvenient facts or alternative interpretations of history. Perhaps those pulling the strings prefer that the average person remain in the dark about the idea of a long-term master plan. After all, if you realize that social upheavals and even world wars might have been deliberately instigated, you might start questioning things. You might become less easily led by propaganda, more wary of calls to hatred, more united with your fellow human beings against real enemies instead of fighting each other. Knowledge can be threatening to those who operate in shadows. In any case, the letter's disappearance from accessible archives stands as an ironic testament to their possible authenticity. It's almost as if the very powers that Pike's letters exposed eventually made sure those letters wouldn't be easily found. Yet enough researchers over the years preserved the content, copying it in books, quoting it in articles, that we can still piece together Pike's chilling message today, as we have done here, with citations from those who documented the letters before they vanished. We have traveled a long, winding road through history and secret plans. Let's pause and take it all in. 3 world wars, foretold in the 19th century, a hidden hand guiding the formation of a one-world order, a plot to obliterate both religion and irreligion, so that a new Luciferian age can rise. It sounds like the plot of a sensational novel or movie, yet it has been presented in serious writings and eerily mirrored by real-world events. How does this make you feel? Perhaps a bit shaken, maybe curious, maybe skeptical. It's natural to wonder, is this really possible? Could it be that the history we learned, of nations pursuing their own interests, of conflicts sparked by political events, is only the surface level? Could there be a deeper layer where a few influential figures inspired by dark spiritual motives nudge the world along a predetermined path? Consider your understanding of the 20th century. World War I often is explained by entangled alliances and a tragic spark in Sarajevo. World War II by the rise of fascism and the failure of appeasement. The Cold War by ideological opposition between capitalism and communism, and the Middle East conflicts by ancient feuds and colonial mishaps. These explanations are not wrong. They are all pieces of the puzzle. But what if they are not the whole puzzle? What if behind these pieces there was a deliberate design leveraging those very tensions to achieve a grander objective? It's as if history were a chess game, and while nations and leaders made moves openly on the board, an unseen chess master was anticipating and manipulating those moves towards checkmate. This perspective doesn't remove human responsibility. After all, it was people who chose to go along with war and hatred. But it suggests a coordination of evil beyond mere human accident. And for those who hold a biblical worldview, it aligns with the concept of a real Satan, a fallen angel, working behind the scenes to bring misery and defy God's plan. In Christian understanding, Satan's ultimate desire is to be worshipped in place of God. Isaiah 14:13-14 describes Lucifer's ancient boast to exalt his throne above God's. What have we seen in Pike's plan? A roadmap to trick humanity into worshiping Lucifer as light. In the prophecies of Scripture, particularly in Revelation, we see a final crisis where a false Messiah or Antichrist appears, and the world is compelled to worship a beastly power under penalty of death. Could Pike's letter be describing the very mechanism by which that comes about? Through war, chaos, and desperation leading to false worship? It's a staggering possibility that makes one's heart tremble, but also affirms the notion that spiritual powers are at work in our world's affairs. As the Apostle Paul wrote, "We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against spiritual wickedness in high places." Ephesians 6:12. Now, it's easy to feel frightened or hopeless when facing such a colossal and dark conspiracy. But this narrative is not shared to instill fear, rather, to awaken awareness and to ultimately offer hope. Yes, hope. Because despite the frightening scope of evil described, we must remember that goodness still exists and light still shines. The same prophecies that foretell a great deception also foretell that it will be short-lived and that truth will prevail. Jesus himself said that in the end times there will be tribulation such as never was, but he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. Matthew 24:13. We are counseled to watch and not be deceived. Simply knowing about schemes like Pike's letters can help inoculate us against deception. If one day a charismatic new truth or leader emerges from the chaos, we will remember this talk and think twice before giving our allegiance. And beyond that, there is the comforting promise that evil does not win in the end. "And the light shineth in darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not," says the Scripture. This means the darkness could not overcome the light. No matter how dark the night of chaos and conspiracy may get, the light of God's love and truth shines on, unconquerable. If Pike's plan was real, it is horrifying. But even if men plot and devils scheme, God is still in control above all. In the Psalms it is written, "He that sitteth in the heavens shall laugh. The Lord shall have them in derision." Psalm 2:4, meaning God ultimately foils the plans of those who set themselves against him. History is permitted to follow a certain course for a time, but it's moving toward a divine conclusion where justice is done. So what do we do with all this? First, we reflect, we re-examine the world around us. Perhaps we become a bit more critical of calls to war and hatred, knowing that someone might be trying to rub two systems against each other to create order out of chaos. As the Freemason motto Ordo ab Chao goes, perhaps we strive to be peacemakers in our personal spheres, resisting the narrative of inevitable clash. Second, we stay spiritually alert. If you believe in God, hold fast to your faith, but also be humble and loving. Remember that extremism on any side could be manipulated by a higher agenda. If you're not religious, still be on guard. Don't let despair or nihilism overtake you if the world seems to crumble, because that despair is exactly the trap laid in Pike's plan. And finally, We find courage and hope in the unchanging principles of truth and love. The very fact that a scheme exists to counterfeit light tells us there is a true light worth clinging to. The true light values freedom of conscience, love for one's neighbor, peace over war, and truth over deception. Call it the Spirit of Christ, if you will, a spirit of selfless love and goodness. In the end, that spirit wins. The destroyer will not reign supreme. His rampage is brief. In the grand story of eternity, evil is but a tragic chapter, and it will be overcome by good. So, dear friend, let the tale of Albert Pike's letters be a warning, but not a sentence of doom. Let it provoke you to ask hard questions. Who really controls the world? What is the meaning of the turmoil we see? And where do I stand in this great drama? The answers may lead you to a deeper search into history, into prophecy, into your own heart. And as you search, remember, the hope of the world does not lie in secret councils or grand schemes of men, but in the enduring promise that light will triumph over darkness. The destroyer may be unleashed for a time, but the Creator and Redeemer of this world has not abandoned us. In the face of monumental conspiracies, we can still say with confidence, if God be for us, who can be against us? Romans 8:31. History's hidden plots can stir our fears, but they can also stir our hearts to seek what is righteous and true. As you step away from this narrative, carry with you a renewed awareness of the times we live in, and an inner assurance that even when evil conspires, goodness and truth have their own quiet power working for a better ending. In the end, each of us has a choice, to be swept along by the tides of chaos, or to stand firm on the rock of truth and love. Which will you choose? The question hangs, inviting your personal response. A response that, perhaps, is part of a greater plan of hope that evil can never defeat.